Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Rachel and today I'm going to be talking about all of the books that I read in the month of June. So June was a very good reading month for me. I think I read about 10 books, which is a little less than I would like to. I'm trying to be in like the 12 to 15 books a month range just to challenge myself, but I read 10 books this month and I had a lot of successes. I had, I think, just 1 or 2 5 stars, but I had a lot of 3 and 4 stars, which I'm very happy about. So without further ado, let's get into it. Let's get started. But before we do, one, I just wanted to say that I do have some reading vlogs for these books, so if you want more in-depth, like as I'm reading reactions, definitely go check those out. I will have them linked down below. And as always, my Instagram and my Goodreads are linked down below. You guys can go follow me on there anytime. I would really appreciate it. So let's get into it. Let's talk about the books that I read in June. Okay, so the very first book that I read in June, not a good start, gonna be honest with you. Not a good start, kind of put a bad taste in my mouth for the month. I luckily made up for it later on, but the first book I read in June was The Confidence of Wildflowers by Michaela Smeltzer. This is a contemporary romance. It is an age gap romance, and I gave it 2 stars. Unfortunately, I was really looking forward to this. I like a good age gap romance when done well. I think the cover is really beautiful, and I don't know, this book just sounded really cute. It follows Salem and a man, Thayer. Salem and Thayer. So they live next door to each other. Salem starts nannying Thayer's child, and then a romance blossoms. Here's my thing. I found this book just kind of hard to like, to be honest with you, because I feel that the characters and the story overall was kind of just like this light, fun time. And I do think that the characters were written very one-dimensionally, superficially. I don't mean that in a negative way. I just mean that like the characters were just very like, it was light, it was fun, it was superficial, very one-dimensional. And then we would have these really intense moments of trauma and PTSD thrown in. And I just felt like those 2 things, for whatever reason, in my mind, in my opinion, I could not like marry those 2 things when I was reading this book. It just came out of nowhere, and it just felt so like out of place with the way that these characters were written and the way that the romance was written. If you have read this book, I am not talking about the thing that happens at the end of this book. That was, that was like very sad. I teared up a little bit at that, but it did not bother me at all. The thing that happens at the end of this book did not affect my rating of this book at all. It was mostly Salem's trauma that would get brought up, and I think trauma absolutely has a place in romance. I'm not mad at that. I just did not like the dichotomy of like these very, I know I keep repeating myself, but one-dimensional characters, very surface level, and then, oh my god, we would get these really, really intense backgrounds and things would get brought up and conversations were had about this trauma, and it just felt like, I don't know, it felt like it didn't fit the vibe of this book, and so I think I had a hard time getting through this. I thought that the writing was kind of clunky, and just those 2 concepts just didn't work for me in this book. So I personally did not like it, gave it 2 stars, not a book that I would recommend. And once again, like, I totally think that trauma has a place in romance, but I just think that like the characters need to be very well fleshed out, and the tone of the story I think needs to match that, and this just read a little bit strangely for me. So unfortunately, not a winner. Speaking of not a winner, the next book that I read in the month of June is City of Gods and Monsters by Kayla Edwards. Holy disappointment is all I have to say. You guys, I wanted this book to be everything to me. I was ready to call this my best book of the year. I was ready to give it 5 stars. I was like posting on my Instagram as I was reading it, like, guys, this is amazing, blah, blah, blah. And wow, did this not turn out good. I gave this book 3 stars, and I feel like depending on my mood, I could have given it 2 stars, maybe a 2.5. This just did not live up to the hype in my mind. If you don't know City of Gods and Monsters, it's an adult urban fantasy. It is heavily compared to Crescent City, House of Earth and Blood by Sarah J. Maas. Definitely has like similar vibes, setting, some similar plot lines, all of that. But truthfully, the biggest downfall of this book was the main character. Her name is Lauren, and she is just very immature, very, I mean, I said it in my vlog, wet blanket. She is a wet blanket, and she's just kind of sucks. I hate to say it, but I didn't root for her. I didn't enjoy her presence. I did not find really anything too charming about her. There was nothing really to root for there. And because she's the main character, like, it affects my ability to enjoy the whole story. I really loved the love interest. His name is Darian Castle. I really liked the setting. I thought that the plot was pretty interesting. There were definitely some things about this book that I enjoyed, but if the main character isn't great, the story isn't going to be great. So unfortunately, I did not love this. I did buddy read this with my friend Hannah from Hannah's Recent reads. We both did not enjoy this. It sucks. It really, really sucks that it did not work out because we both really wanted to love it. It is quite the chunker, and I thought that this was going to give us like a lot of slow burn romance and interesting character development and fleshed out characters, and that just didn't happen. So this is one of my biggest disappointments of the year for sure. This is also like a Kindle Unlimited fantasy romance, so I was excited. I wanted to be excited about it so I could tell you guys to be excited about it and go read it, but unfortunately this one just did not work for me. The next book I read in June is To Bleed a Crystal Bloom by Sarah A. Parker. This is a dark Rapunzel retelling. We follow our main character named Orlaith. When she is very young, Orlaith's family gets killed by these creatures, these beasts. Somehow Orlaith survives. A man like comes and saves her and takes her back to his castle, and he raises her kind of as his ward. Then when she gets older, they kind of have this complex relationship of like, are we into each other? What is our relationship? And then meanwhile, these same beasts that attacked Orlaith's family when she was very young come to the castle and come to the village that they're in, and you know, the guy who saved her might not actually be a good guy. Just kind of a lot going on here. This book was just very fine. I believe I gave it 3 stars, and I just wanted more. Like, I just don't really feel like a lot happened in this book, and at the end we did get a little bit of action, a little bit, but honestly it felt like one giant prologue leading up to the last 75% of this book. And if you're gonna do that, you know, I just feel like you have to have very compelling characters, very compelling world building, very compelling something going on, and that just wasn't happening. I don't think this book is like bad. I just honestly, it was a situation where I read it, I got through it, I'm not going to pick up the second one, and honestly, like, I don't think I'll ever think about this book again, which is not great, you know. Like, it was fine, but there were just some things that I didn't enjoy. There were some plot lines that got started here that were completely abandoned by the end of the book. You could argue they'll be brought up in the next book, but it just wasn't done in a way that really made sense. If you really want to read this, I don't not recommend it, but I don't really like recommend it. It was just like very, very average. So unfortunately, 3 stars for this book. Switching gears, oh my god. Okay, so I did a fantasy romance reading vlog earlier this month. It's my Kindle Unlimited fantasy romance reading vlog. Go watch it. The 2 books that I was most excited for in that video were City of Gods and Monsters and To Bleed a Crystal Bloom, and both were disappointing. But I wanted to pick up one more book. I generally read 3 books a vlog, and I just randomly picked up this book, The Song of the Marked by S.M. Gaither. I wasn't excited to read this, and in the vlog I read City of Gods and Monsters first, disappointment, To Bleed a Crystal Bloom, disappointment / like whatever, and then I needed to read one more book, and I was like, oh my god, I guess I'll just read this. Like, I don't even know. I just picked it up randomly. It gets compared to Throne of Glass and From Blood and Ash quite a bit, so I was like intrigued, but I was also just like, oh my god, like, I don't really know. You guys, this was a 5-star. This book shocked the hell out of me. I did not expect to love it as much as I did, but it was fantastic. This is an adult fantasy romance. It's a little bit more fantasy than romance, I would say, but it definitely has a strong romance within it. Our main character's name is Cassia, and Cassia is a mercenary, and she lives in this world where there is this plague that has gone around, and if you have had the plague, you are called marked, and most people don't survive the plague. It's very, very deadly, very, very dangerous. However, Cassia is one of the very few people who did survive this disease, and she is fade marked, so her eyes are gray and her hair is gray, like this kind of light, sort of grayed out look. You can kind of tell here, I mean, she just looks blonde basically, but she's supposed to have like gray hair, gray eyes, very noticeable. So she does often wear a glamour because people are very curious about the fade marked people in this world, because how did you survive? Doesn't make sense. People are also looking for a cure, but maybe in not the best ways, so she kind of just wants to hide that she is fade marked and live her life. She's a mercenary, and her keeper, I guess you could say, hires her and her fellow mercenaries to go investigate the royal family, because people think that the king is either like not really doing enough, figure out a solution for the plague, or they're doing something mysterious that like might be, you know, against the people, so he just wants them to go investigate. Cassia ends up being kidnapped by the captain of the royal guard. His name is Alander. So after getting kidnapped, Cassia's glamour that she wears actually ends up fading away because she's in the prison dungeons, and the prince of the royal family sees that she's fade marked, and she's very nervous at first, obviously thinks that he's going to do something terrible, but he says, hey, actually, I'm very curious about you, and I would love for you and Alander to go and investigate and try to find like a solution to the plague. This prince also thinks that the gods may be playing a part in this plague that is happening on the people, and he has these very like big ideas, and they're kind of like, okay, we'll see what we can do. Gods play like a huge role in this book for sure, which I always love in a fantasy novel. Always love when gods are involved. So Cassia and Alander are sent out to go and investigate along with a few others, and they just have like this wonderful little journey, little enemies to lovers. We have an amazing side cast of characters of Cassia's friends, really good writing, just like all all of these things that I really enjoyed, and this book was a 4-star all the way up until the end. The ending, you guys, literally shocked me. If you read this, you might be able to tell what the big twist at the end is. There are 2 big reveals at the end of this book. Both surprised me, and I feel like I'm usually good at playing detective, but I literally did not expect either of these things to happen, and I was shocked. I was sitting there, jaw dropped. I immediately messaged my friends and said, you guys need to read this right now because I am on like a high after finishing this book. Basically, like everything we were presented was a lie, and it's just so good, you guys. I think what I love about this book so much is it did a good setup. We have interesting characters, we have good writing. It's a very like classic fantasy story, I would say. And as far as the comparisons to Throne of Glass and From Blood and Ash, they are there, but I don't think it's like a replica. I don't think it's so similar, but like you can definitely draw comparisons. But what I like most about this book and what I'm most like just enamored with and excited for is the ending is just setting up so many possibilities for what could potentially happen, and the dynamics between people are going to be very different, and it's crazy. It's such a crazy ending, you guys. I am so excited. I have seen a lot of you say that you are going to be picking this up and reading it, and I am so excited. Please message me your reaction to the ending. I need to know. I think a few of my friends are reading this book in July as well, which I'm so excited for. So I feel like this series, this is the Shadows and Crowns series, by the way. It doesn't get a lot of hype. It is a KU fantasy romance series. Absolutely deserves the hype 100%, and I just loved this so much. So the next book that I read in the month of June is Things We Never Got Over by Lucy Score. So this is a contemporary romance. We kind of have a Grumpy Sunshine romance happening here, small town vibes. Our main character's name is Naomi. Naomi's estranged twin sister calls her and says, hey, I need help. Can you come meet me in the small Virginia town? Naomi drops everything, comes and meets her sister. Her sister isn't there, but once she arrives in this town, she realizes that her twin sister is very hated by the community. A lot of people think Naomi is her twin, so she kind of gets treated poorly when she shows up. But then her sister does end up showing up, stealing Naomi's car, stealing Naomi's money, and leaving her daughter, her 11-year-old daughter named Waylay, who Naomi had no idea existed. So now basically, Naomi is picking up the pieces of her sister's life, trying to take care of her niece, and this grumpy local guy named Knox is kind of giving Naomi a hard time because he did not like her twin sister, and also thinks that Naomi is kind of this like uppity city girl or whatever, and they have a romance. All of that sounds great, and it's like fun. It's a fun setup for a book, but I truly just did not like this book, you guys. My biggest complaint is the characters were just really over the top and really ridiculous, in my opinion, particularly Knox. I just did not find him to be charming at all. I don't really think he had any redeeming qualities. Naomi was okay. She really annoyed me in the beginning, but she did get better as the book went on. I will say my favorite part of this book was watching the dynamic between Naomi and Waylay, her 11-year-old niece, and kind of that relationship growing. And there is also an aspect of found family here with the members of this small town kind of rallying around Naomi, but Knox was not it. And also there's like this weird crime storyline that happens at the end of the book, and it was just so weird. Felt like a parody, felt like an SNL skit. I don't know, you guys. This book was not for me. I gave it 2 stars, and it's also so long. I know I say this all the time, but good lord, can we stop making romances over 400 pages? Thank you very much. So overall, didn't really love this book, would not recommend, definitely not a winner. The next book I read in the month of June is Funny You Should Ask by Alyssa Sussman. This book I ended up giving 3 stars, I think. I love the idea of this book, I just didn't like the execution. This book follows a writer and a celebrity. This writer, she interviews a celebrity for like a magazine or something, and the article goes viral because people feel like maybe something happened, the writer and the celebrity, and like there's just kind of this buzz around it, and it ends up sort of launching the writer's career. It definitely gives good publicity to this actor, and then 10 years later they meet up again to kind of redo the article, and a romance blossoms. My biggest problem with this book was it was very insta-love for out of nowhere and for like no reason, and they spent a total of like I think 5 or 6 days together in the entirety of the 10 years. They're like separated for 10 years. I think they spent like 2 or 3 days together in the beginning, then 10 years later they spent 2 or 3 days together, and they're like, yeah, I'm in love with you and I've been pining for you this entire time. And it was just so quick and so fast and just out of nowhere, and I never felt a connection to the romance at all. I didn't really find a connection to either of the characters either. I didn't really care whether they got together. It was very surface level and light. I will say that I absolutely love this author's writing style and her voice. I thought that the writing was great, but the romance overall was just so quick. They were professing their love for each other, and I'm like, I'm not buying it. I need a slow burn, I need tension, I need a building up. So overall, this just, it didn't really work for me, and the reasons for them kind of like coming together and being so in love with each other were never super clear to me. So I didn't really love it. I don't hate it though. It was a fun, quick, cute read, but probably just another book that I'm like never gonna think about again. The next book that I read in the month of June is Every Summer After by Carly Fortune. I absolutely loved this book. I gave it 4 stars. It is quite literally almost the exact same plot as Love in Other Words by Christina Lauren, but I did actually like Every Summer After better. So we have childhood best friends to lovers. Our main character's name is Percy, and when she is a teenager, her parents buy this cottage in this sort of lake town in Canada, and she lives next door to Sam and Charlie. Sam and Percy become friends, and over 6 summers, we see them go from friends to falling in love, and a tragedy strikes. We don't know what it is, but something happens that causes them to not speak anymore. Flash forward like 12 years later, when Percy is an adult, she has not talked to Sam this entire time. Sam's brother Charlie calls up Percy and says, hey, our mom died, you should come to the funeral, and she reunites with Charlie and Sam. I really think that the childhood was very well done. I loved the flashback of when they were kids growing up and their growing feelings for each other. It was really, really sweet, and I liked them as adults a lot. They were very flawed, and the situation that happened between them is definitely messy, and I do think some people aren't going to like it. There's a trope in this book that is very commonly disliked. I am somebody who usually dislikes this trope as well, but I don't know. I just thought that the love story was really beautiful anyway. I definitely can understand if people don't love how this book ended, but I personally really liked it. I thought it was beautiful. I thought it was sad. I thought it was, you know, it pulls at your heartstrings and it just makes you think, and even at the end, you're just like, I don't know if you guys made the right decision, but I'm here for it. You know, I don't know. I thought that this book was really, really beautiful. It is the perfect beachy read, poolside read, and I 100% recommend it. And then the next book I read in June is Heir of Fire by Sarah J. Maas. This is the 4th book in the series, if you count The Assassin's Blade as the first book, which I do. So 4th book in the series, and I loved it. It's a reread, but as I've said, as I've been rereading the Throne of Glass series, I just realized how much I missed the first time that I read it. I first read the series last year, and I binged the series in like a month, and I was just reading it so quickly. I really enjoyed it. Like, I had a really good time, but I missed so many details. It honestly feels like I'm reading it for the first time, and the reread is actually hitting better. I am enjoying the reread more than I enjoy reading the series for the first time. Heir of Fire is a very pivotal book. It is a very important book. I am just absolutely obsessed with the story that takes place here. I just love it. I'm not really going to say much if you haven't read the series. It would be very spoilery for me to talk about it, but this book is just gorgeous, perfection, amazing. Absolutely loved it. 5 stars. And then of course the next book I read is Queen of Shadows, which is the 5th book in the Throne of Glass series. I do think that this is my favorite in the series. When I finished my reread, which I actually finished it yesterday, I literally was just like sitting there thinking, this is one of the best books that I've ever read. Like, I'm sorry, but it is. It's that good. This is genuinely one of my favorite books of all time. And I know I say like a lot of books are my favorite of all time, but truly, I mean it. This is definitely up there. This book is so incredible. Like, so much happens in this book, character development wise and plot wise, and a lot of plot lines, but then we have new beginnings of others, and I love this book so much. Absolutely my favorite in the series. I do know that I really liked Empire of Storms, which is the next book in the series when I read it for the first time, but I just don't think that like it's going to hit me quite the way that this one did. Like, this book is just, it's so freaking good. While I was reading this book, I literally wanted to go back to the beginning of the series and start rereading it again because I was just loving it. I love this world. I love the writing. I have nothing bad to say. This book is perfect to me. Literally, this book is perfect. 5 stars. Queen of Shadows is the best. All right, and then the last book that I read in the month of June is Gleam by Raven Kennedy. This is the 3rd book in the Plated Prisoner series. I actually had a very surprising reaction to this book. So I did on Goodreads rate it a 4-star, but I kind of corrected that in the review to a 3.5. I don't give half-star ratings because I'm just like, you just gotta give a 1 through 5 star rating. I don't know. I don't like to do half stars. I really just like to kind of force myself to pick either it's a 3 or a 4 star, it's a 1 or a 2 star, never like a 0.5 star. But I just couldn't because this book is not a 3-star book. I feel like that's too low of a rating, but it is not a 4-star book. I feel like that's too high of a rating. So I'm sitting at 3.5. It's not something that I want to like make a habit out of, which is totally fine. Like, I don't care if people give I see people give books a rating of like 4.8 stars. Like, I don't care. fair. It's just a personal thing. I really just like to stick to like the 1 through 5 star rating, but this is truly like the definition of a 3.5 star book. As I said, this is the third installment in the Plated Prisoner series, and I'm not really going to go into too much of the plot as it is the third book, but the Plated Prisoner series as a whole is a King Midas retelling. Our main character's name is Arin. She is like gold touched and favored by the king, and sort of just follows her journey living in the kingdom and the political aspects of what's going on in the larger country and how Arin plays a role in that. I do really enjoy Raven Kennedy's writing style. I think she's such a great writer. I don't know what it was, but here's my thing. So just looking at this book, I definitely think that the first like 50% of the book, not a lot happened, and I just wish that we would kind of get things going. There was a lot of action at the end, but I do feel like this book could have been condensed a little bit. I do feel like there were just moments in this book that I'm like, I feel like we could have just cut this out. I feel like we could have just made this book a little bit shorter and kept the momentum going a little bit better. But here's my thing. Overall, I still absolutely love the Plated Prisoner series. I think it is great. It's 100% a series that I recommend when people ask me for fantasy romance recommendations. But I do think between Gild, Glint, and now Gleam, I feel like those 3 books could have been condensed down into 2 books. There's very important events that happen in all of the books, but I also think that there's kind of a lot of filler, which sounds harsh, but like I love this series, you guys. I'm just saying that like I do think that the first 3 books could have been condensed down into 2 books. Like that's kind of my takeaway. After I finish this, I look back at the series as a whole so far and I'm like, yeah, I feel like we didn't need all of that. We didn't need all of that build up to this. The book ends in a very exciting way, and like I'm super excited to read the 4th book, Glow. I will be starting that probably like tomorrow, honestly, because Hannah and I are buddy reading it. We're very excited for it. I've seen glowing, no pun intended, reviews for Glow, so I'm really excited to get to it. But yeah, this was like, it was good and I enjoyed it. I didn't dislike it, but I'm just like, come on, like let's get it going. I feel like we are just kind of now getting to the plot moving forward, and we've been building up to a lot of different storylines and different plot lines that I'm like, okay, let's do it, let's go. And I just feel like this book might just suffer from being the 3rd book in the series that I feel like dragged just a teeny bit, but I still liked it and I still recommend it, you guys. I don't want to sound like I'm like talking trash about this book. I kind of wish that it was a little bit shorter, or we just sort of combined the 3 books and broke them down into 2. This is a 3.5. I did really enjoy it. I still think the series overall is like a 4-star series, and I really hope that I love Glow. Like I'm predicting I'm going to give Glow 5 stars. I just hope that it does have a little bit of a faster pace. All right, guys, so that is all of the books that I read in the month of June. Go ahead and let me know in the comments down below what was the best book that you read in the month of June and what is the worst book that you read in the month of June and why. I would love to hear it. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. It really helps me out, and subscribe to my channel for bookish content from me every single week. I really appreciate that you watched this video. I hope that you're having a fantastic day, and I will catch you guys in the next one.